your growth as a leader could be dependent on how much that you delegate that you're actually good at. As leaders, we have these skills, so we are good at some things, and we can probably easily fill our calendar up with things that we're good at. And that's the temptation to move the organization forward faster, right? But if you're actually going to make a long-term sustainable organization and be a more effective leader long-term as a result, you got to personally grow in your leadership too.
This is the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where Coach and Jon learn along with you from some of the world's most decorated leaders. Recently promoted, let's sharpen the saw together.
Coach, we know we're supposed to delegate the things that we're not good at. As a leader, that's one of the most important pieces of leadership is delegating, as Jim Collins says, getting the right people on the bus and then putting them in the right seats. But what about the things that we are good at? Today on the Limitless Leadership Lounge, we're going to talk about delegation, but from a little bit of a different angle. Why should you delegate even some of the things you are good at? And there are actually 4 reasons that we've come up with today for you to reconsider delegation, not just as something where you can throw the skills that you're not good at off to somebody else, but as something where you can even involve team members when it comes to things that you actually excel at. So we're going to dive into those 4 things. Coach, first of all, you had to do a lot of delegating. The head coach can't do all the work. So let's start running through those 4 ideas of reasons we should delegate even those tasks we're good at.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jon, because as you go through, we often talk about some mundane tasks that can be done very quickly. But if you're going to grow as a leader and be the true leader, you've got to delegate those tasks. And it could be as simple as, it's not to say not willing to take the garbage out or plan an appointment. Those are all things. And when I had a good assistant, sometimes it was a parent that volunteered to be my assistant, and he or she would do those types of things that would really take time off of what I needed to focus in. So my first point is, analyze as a leader the things that are most important that you must do and must get good at, and then really look at what are things that I really, even though they're pretty easy to do or I'm pretty good at, that you really must delegate. So we could go through a long list, but I really want our listeners to think about what are some of the things right now. Make a list of 8 or 10 things that I shouldn't be doing those, and then find whether you have an executive assistant or just another team member that can do those just as well. And one little point I will say is, in delegating, I learned this, is you got to make sure that they both have the character, that they're willing, they have the pride to do a good job, and the competence. So you don't want to delegate an extremely difficult skill unless you're going to give them some real training. But there are some things that are fairly easy that they probably already have the skills, and you as a leader should know.
That's a great point. So the idea of delegating the mundane and the simple tasks to get them off of your plate. So I can think of just a couple that I'm doing right now that I probably shouldn't be doing. And that includes things like the calendar management, booking appointments, managing your calendar. That's a big one. You mentioned taking out the trash, which is a simple example, but something that's very true. I am great at taking out the trash. Ask my wife. I'm so good at it. I am just the best trash taker outer there is, but that doesn't mean I necessarily should be doing it as a leader. So good things to think about. So delegating those simple and that mundane. Point number 2 that I really want to bring up here is the power of the team. And sometimes we have to delegate for the benefit of the team. We had Dr. Craig Nathanson on not a long time ago here on the Limitless Leadership Lounge, and he talked about the power of his humanistic leadership model, and that is people first leadership. And that doesn't mean that people are just cogs in a wheel. It doesn't mean that they're just means to an end that you're trying to accomplish as a leader. You're actually investing in them. And sometimes that means delegating tasks that you might even be good at to them so they can take ownership and grow in their own leadership journey. And so that's another reason to excel as a leader and to delegate as a leader, because when it comes to making your team, giving them ownership and the opportunities to take on different roles, even if they're like leadership type roles in your organization, the organization gets stronger. Some leaders see that as a threat. Some leaders see that as weak leaders see it as, I don't want to relinquish control and nobody can do it better than me. But when you give up that control a little bit and mundanes give away some of those tasks that aren't necessarily even mundane. So the first point you were making was talking about those simple tasks. But for this point, I'm talking about delegating even a little bit more leadership roles. Hey, Jenna, you take the lead on that particular project, or Sally, you take the lead on getting this organized. That's even delegating some of your leadership, which you're good at as a leader, but building a strong team means investing in the humans on your team. So I think that's an important point to make too.
Yeah, I want to augment John because it's a very powerful point. Is a couple things. Once in a while, I would have one of my assistants run part of practice because
Mm-hmm.
giving them a chance to build their ability to be a teacher and a coach. So you got a great point there. And the other part is that I believe the best leaders are consistently developing their team members to be great leaders. And I think that's what the best leaders do. So I love your point. Point number three is one where, as a leader, and I'm going to give you an illustration in a moment, it's something that you most likely are pretty good at, but you really don't like to do. And it's an important part of the job. My illustration is in my coaching career, I watched a lot of game film. And it's not something I actually was pretty good at it, but I didn't really like it. And so towards the second half of my career, my assistant coach, he really loved looking at film and he was really good at it. And I delegated more and more. Now, that's not to say I didn't still watch some film. I did. That was
You
part of my
have to.
job. But
Right.
at the same
Yeah.
time, I really delegated. And I would often, as he got better at breaking down film, where he would show little clips where I used to show too long of things. And so I really built on his strength and he really liked it. And although I knew it was really necessary in preparation, is something I never really liked, even being a head coach for 30 years. So that's another thing you got to really figure out is you may be pretty good at it, but boy, if you can develop someone on your team that really likes it and becomes good at it, boy, that's a great burden off your chest.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to force yourself through things that you don't like just because you're good at them as a leader. There
Right.
are some things that we just don't like. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
certain things part of that process. And that kind of goes into my final point here about growth as a leader, because while there's things that you don't like that you're good at, there may be things that you do like that you aren't good at. And as a leader, if you're delegating all those things that you aren't good at, but you actually want to grow in those skills, and instead you're not delegating and just hoarding all the things that you are good at, you're never going to get better at anything if you're just always doing what you're good at. So, delegation of things that you're good at could actually make you a stronger leader and a more well rounded leader. Overall, your growth as a leader could be dependent on how much that you delegate that you're actually good at. As leaders, we have some skills, we have some talents, right? We've risen to the top of organizations or in leadership positions for a reason. We have these skills, so we are good at some things, and we can probably easily fill our calendar up with things that we're good at. And that's the temptation to move the organization forward faster, right? But if you're actually going to make a long-term sustainable organization and be a more effective leader long-term as a result, you got to personally grow in your leadership too. And so if you take on some of those things that maybe you're less good at, but you have the opportunity to learn about them or improve at them by freeing up yourself time to work on them, then that's good for growth as a leader. And let's also face it, when it comes to leadership training and investing in yourself and your own personal growth, we don't do enough of that because as leaders, our calendars are packed with, again, things that we're good at, right? So understanding that delegating some of those opens up time for us and we can focus on fewer tasks but give our full attention on them and build momentum as we're working on them. That's another great reason to delegate as a leader.
And John, I'm going to just do one little side note because I think it's so essential in leadership. What I really truly believe, because people ask me, because fortunately at the end of my career, we had a great run where we were winning championships in multiple years in a row. And I always talk to the people about the music, the one hit wonder, or you see it all the time in professional, high level college sports where they win it one year and where are they the next year? And I truly believe, and this is what I share with leaders, is augmenting your point is the fact that as a leader, you have to keep growing. And then the second part, which we already talked about in another point, is you got to grow your team. Because if you're not consistently growing, if you stay the same, people are going to blow right by you. And that's why you see so many one-hit wonders, whether it's in music, entertainment, or the business world.
Keep growing, and the only way to grow is to delegate, because we only have that much time, so much time in the day. And so running down those four keys again: delegating those simple and mundane tasks. That's even if you're good at them. If you're really great at something simple, the opportunity to delegate, you should still take that. Also, delegate to put your team in positions where they can grow, because when you grow your team members as leaders and help their own leadership journey, everybody benefits. The rising tides raise all ships. So that's reason number two. Reason number three to delegate things that you're good at is if you don't like them, and other team members might grow into liking them. Remember Coach's example about watching film. He liked a lot of things about coaching, but it sounds like you didn't like watching film too much. And then finally, the point of growth as a leader. If you're able to delegate some of those things that even you're great at, you give yourself an opportunity to grow in those areas where you're not as great at. And you can also develop and learn as a leader and improve your journey that way. So there you go. Delegation, so key, a big part of leadership. But a lot of people only talk about delegating things that they're not good at. I think, and Coach, I know you echo this sentiment after going through these four keys, that our audience can take away why they should even consider delegating things that they're great at.
Yeah, well said, John. And remember, when you're delegating, it doesn't mean that you're just letting it go. Remember that the character and competence and teaching and help model that person as you delegate. We can't just throw it to them and just expect them to be great at it. You got to, as a leader, you got to help them.
That's a really important point. So, do you know any leaders who are struggling maybe with so much on their plate they need to delegate? Or maybe you know a leader who feels like, I can't delegate anything that I'm good at because that would be not efficient or threatening my own authority. Send them this episode and just start a dialogue with them and see if you can maybe understand where they're coming from and have a conversation about leadership. We hope that this episode can be the catalyst for that. Share this episode with whoever might need to hear this today, and we'll be back next week on the Limitless Leadership Lounge.